Welcome to Tech in the Car. I'm here at Porsche UK with a beautiful, stunning Porsche Taycan Turbo S, and I've got the Audi e-Tron GT Quattro here as well. Big thank you to Coulsdon Marshall Audi for this, and a big thank you to Porsche UK. Let's talk about the name. So this is the Porsche Taycan, not the Taycan, not the Toucan, nothing like that, Taycan. There's even a video on Porsche's YouTube explaining how to pronounce it. So that's the first thing. The next thing is it's called the Turbo and Turbo S, at least in the top end of the range. Why is that? When it doesn't have an engine, it's not got any turbos. It's just because it's a way Porsche denotes their high performance models. Nothing complicated, nothing controversial, no need to get your panties in a twist as English people sometimes do. It just is their way of telling you this is the fastest, most powerful version of the Taycan you can get. Of course, there are standard versions, the 4S, the rear-wheel drive, and of the Cross Turismo as well. They don't have turbo in the name, so if you really don't like having turbo in the name, that's your answer. But if you want the best performance, you want a turbo like this model here, or the Turbo S. So let's talk about the Taycan Turbo. This car has a range of about 280 miles. It loses a bit of that range which you get from the rear-wheel drive version, which is around 300, which is the same as the e-Tron GT Quattro, because it is a performance car. It can do 0 to 60 in 3.1 seconds. The Turbo S can do it in 2.9 seconds. And this car, as I already mentioned, is about 131,000 pounds with all the specs and all the options. This car and the e-Tron GT are built on the same platform that VW Group developed to make sure that they could move forward with fantastic designs. And indeed, there are lots of similarities in the cars, including, as I mentioned, the rear, which has the same size boot, but there are also changes. I mentioned some things which were different. So you can see the Porsche has a lower nose. It's got the really cool, very flat Porsche lights with the 4 LED daytime running lights. It has a very distinct Porsche look, very much just like the Mission E concept in 2012. Now, if we look at the front of the Audi, there are definitely some obvious differences. It's got the more elongated style Audi light, and it's got a grille. It doesn't need a grille. There's no engine, of course, just like the Taycan, but that's an Audi trait, so they've done it with that design, with this contrast color. On the RS versions, that's all blacked out. That looks like an Audi, and that looks like a Porsche, both from the front and from the back. And that is really clever styling, even though it's built on the same platform. Now, one thing you've seen probably everywhere is the fact that this door for the charging is electric. That is super cool. Just like the Audi, it's got a little pop-down bit for the DC charge. There's also an AC on the other side, just like on the Audi, there's both a AC and a DC. Very rocking, don't you think? And it's got the same button, it's got the same colors here on the side. But I mean, that's pretty cool, isn't it? Automatic electric doors on the charging port. Just do this all day. I wonder how long it would take to run the batteries down if I just did that all day. And would I end up with wrist injuries before I get there? Anyway, that's really cool. Let's talk about the back of the Porsche Taycan. So we got a little button here you press to open the boot. That's a different way of opening it than the Audi. I prefer that. That's much neater. Inside it's exactly the same size, 366 litres. There's the same scuff plates. There's the same space, the same configuration. It's got that Porsche design and a spoiler which you can't put up unless it is being driven. There's no way to do it manually. Unlike on the Audi, where you can actually raise a spoiler so you can pose with your Audi e-Tron GT. What about the back of the Audi? Let's have a look at that. Both the Taycan and the e-Tron GT have these very muscular shoulders over the rear wheels. They probably look wider at the rear than from the front. You can definitely feel that when you're looking in the mirrors. In terms of design, you can see this distinctive Audi light bar, which is 3D and sticks out. But obviously, if we're talking about the space in the back and how much room you have here, this works exactly the same way. Excuse all the stuff in the back here. You got the same space, the same scuff plates. I already said that. Very similar. The buttons are in the same place as well. There's one extra button there to lock it as well. But other than that, it's identical. In terms of wheels, they're both 21-inch wheels. They both look very similar in design. It's got the Porsche look, the Audi look. They're very nice looking wheels. You have your choices though with both. You get more options with the Porsche. In general, Porsche gives you more options of everything. If you want a more personalized car, then Porsche really is a way to go. However, if you're an Audi lover and you love the Audi size and design, then that's the way to go with that. Now, one thing you can see with a Porsche is the door handles pop out like that, which is super, super cool. And then they lock like that. Now, one thing these do both have in common is they both have the ability to charge at 800 volts, which means you can charge the car up to 60 miles in 5 minutes, which is very similar to a traditional petrol car. That's a really, really big improvement for electric vehicles. In fact, the only other cars that can do it are the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6. These were the first two cars. In fact, the Porsche was the first car that could do that kind of charging. As it is right now, you can charge 10 to 80% in 20 minutes with one of the really rapid chargers. You can get places like Ionity can give you that kind of charge. They also have the ability to connect without having to be authenticated to chargers. What I mean by that is you don't need an app, you don't need to scan a card. If you have a compatible charging unit and a car like these two, then the car can shake hands directly with the charging unit and then know who you are, know what the car is, and charge it, and then charge you the amount of money it costs to charge a car up. That is exactly like the way that Tesla does it, and it's one of the great benefits of having a Tesla, because you don't have to fiddle around tapping cards, just plug it in and go. Saves you time, especially in English weather when it's going to start raining probably any second. So why are these cars so similar? It's because they're built off the same platform the VW Group created, which means they have the same underpinnings. There are some differences. They have a different design, but there are some things like the boot area, which are pretty much identical, and there are some things which are very different, like the front and indeed the design at the back of the car, with a light bar which goes all the way across on the Audi, and the nose being much higher on the Audi, this being much lower. In fact, the Porsche, unsurprisingly, is more aerodynamic than the Audi. It's got a drag coefficient of 0.22. The Audi e-Tron GT has a drag coefficient of 0.24. Welcome to the inside of the Porsche Taycan Turbo. The inside of this car is just another level. The leather, the feel, the finish, the seats, this just feels like a special place to be. It really, really does. And I'm going to look at the technology in a minute, the displays we have here and all the cool little things and the infotainment in front of me as well. But just sitting inside this car, it feels luxurious. Alcantara on the headliner. We've got the same panoramic sunroof as the e-Tron GT. Sitting in here, you can again see the similarities between the Taycan and the e-Tron GT. And looking in the rear view mirror, I can see the rear window, the rear windscreen is exactly the same as the e-Tron GT. It's the same shape, the same size, the same view. The only difference is we've got Alcantara on the back there, which looks slightly nicer in the mirror. But other than that, that is very, very similar. Inside this car, the Porsche steering wheel, this is a much, much, much more sporty steering wheel. To be expected, this is a Porsche. That's not the RS e-Tron GT that I've been driving. That's just a standard model. It's a smaller wheel. Porsche seem to have smaller wheels, and they just feel much more sporty, ironically enough, because it's smaller and easier to grab, and I guess probably easier to steer. One difference between that and a Tesla Model S Plaid, which has a yoke, although the yoke is pretty cool. The other thing too in here, as you're sitting in here, the seating position feels very different. I also have a different view because the front of the car is different. So even though the bonnet drops away quicker than the Audi, the light haunches, which are where the lights are at the front of this Porsche, actually are more visible. And I think that's quite interesting. I think you might be able to use it as a way of placing yourself into the corners when you're driving, or just driving around any corners. Doesn't have to be on the Nürburgring. So, you know, that's something which is interesting to note. The other thing too is the way that the doors and the center console join each other is slightly simpler. On the Audi, it's got a very intricate kind of way it connects up. On here, it's just ends and the door is there. It's just a lot simpler to look at. The other thing too, a very expensive option. The sports chrono is on this car, and I can see the time very, very easily. And that brings it up a touch again with that classiness. Of course, the white leather in here is really, really nice. I thought the same thing when I was in the Ferrari Roma. This is a really, really nice interior, and it feels very, very special. Let's have a look at some of the tech now and see how it works. What are some of the cool features and things in this interior that you don't get in other cars? So the first thing to be noted is we have two infotainment screens. We have a bottom screen and a top screen. This is a vertical screen, a bit like if you were holding your iPad vertically, or maybe like a Galaxy folding phone. And then this is a horizontal screen, like widescreen. You can also option an additional display on the passenger side. This car doesn't have it. And of course, we've got this beautiful curved display up here, which lets you see all the information when driving. And what can you do on this display in the middle? Well, it's a very interesting design. You can see at the bottom here, we have our volume buttons. This is not a physical button, it's a touch sensitive button. I think it's actually quite a good placement for it. However, you know, I do have to admit that the times where buttons used to be very plentiful in cars have gone, and I love my gadgets and I love my touchscreens, but you know, you can see some people may be complaining about that. I also love the fact you have your power button down here, which will turn off the central display and the infotainment system. Don't get confused between that power button and the power button on the car, which turns off the car. And interestingly enough, with the power button on the car, you have to hold it down for a couple of seconds to power off the car. That's different from other electric cars I've driven. Going back to this central display, we also have a little touchpad area here in the middle, which I can then use to control my display in the middle. This is, yes, a display controlling another display. And that isn't actually a bad idea. Look, I know that this isn't very far to reach from here, but if you're driving along, this is probably slightly more distracting than going like that and using your finger on this little touchpad. And it's a very clever use of the space that Porsche have done. It's very forward thinking. Also, it has a lot in common with other cars like Mercedes, which actually physically have touchpads, and Audis, previous generation Audis, which had touchpads. So people are familiar with that touchpad wheel kind of thing. Having that in the middle is a good thing to have. And then we have a button for our charging information. I can see my current charge status, and I can pre-cool and preheat it as well. So I've got 97% and 229 miles. If I want to charge a car quicker, I can press that button and it will pre-cool or preheat the car. We can turn that off because we don't need that right now. But on a cold day, that will allow the battery to charge faster and get that charge going much quicker. This is something which Tesla does, and again, is very unusual in other cars. The other thing I can do is I can open my charging ports with the two little buttons down here. We've got our AC, DC, and our AC connector. So that means I can open them from inside the car. It makes sense, it's electric, it's automatic, but having a button to do it here is again a nice thing. This is really good in the bad weather, in the winter, in the rain. Electric cars generally don't have canopies over their charging stations, so you're gonna get a bit annoyed in the winter, it's fair to say. Being able to open that from the inside is a great thing. And when the charging network is able to support handshaking with the cars directly like Tesla does, that will make it even easier. And of course, when you can charge it 60 miles in 5 minutes, when that infrastructure exists, that will be even better as well. The other thing we have here is haptic feedback. I can be sure when I select an option, there's no pressing it and I'm not sure if anything happened, and there's a back button as well here. I can also open the boot and the front from inside here as well. And then I can also activate the camera system and see the 360 camera, which is a really good 360 camera. And one other thing about this 360 camera, which is really unusual about this, is the back camera lets you wash it. Yes, you can wash your back camera from inside the car. Porsche, this is amazing. There are two things which annoy me when trying to reverse a car. One, a dirty back camera, and two, not being able to see around your car at nighttime. This button lets me wash it from inside, turning on the washer, cleaning the back camera, so I can make sure I can see even when it's bad weather and it's terrible. Really clever idea. I'd love it if a company did put lights on the outside of the car though when you've got the 360 camera at night, so you can see where you're going. That would be really cool. Somebody please do that. But this is a huge thing, a washer on the back there. Amazing Porsche. I absolutely love that. You've also got quick access here to the main infotainment system using these shortcuts. So navigation, music, phone, and your settings. Again, they're making it very easy to use the main navigation, the main infotainment system from down here. Yes, it is a touchscreen. I can still control it from here. But what is cool about this is I have the options, and that again is very thoughtful, and that thoughtfulness is really important to the driver experience. There's no doubt about that. If you've ever wondered about the ambient lighting settings in your Porsche, no problem. We can go into comfort here. We can click on our colors, and we can change it. We can scroll it down and up, and in fact, let's use a little control pad here because that makes it a lot easier to do. And you can change what color you want and the warmth. So let's say we go for green. There we go. And then we change the brightness. We can make it brighter. And then we can go down to the doors. And we can change the brightness of the doors. So you can change your settings on your Porsche. We can change our cup holder brightness as well. Yes, you can adjust the brightness of your cup holder and of your center console. This car is going to be very green for the next person that gets in it, and as well for the footwell. There we go. So we've got our overall brightness at 100%, control from the little pad here. And what about the gear shift lever? Well, this is kind of like a little brawn shavery kind of design, and you press it up and down to change gear. So I can put it into reverse by pressing this, put it into drive, or put it into neutral. And then when I want to put it into park, there's a nice park button right there. Very, very simple and easy to use. I love that. And then for the lights, well, the lights, there's little buttons on the side here that I can use to turn the lights on and off. And again, nice and simple to use. And on the other side here, we have our buttons for the traction control, to change the suspension and the modes, and to adjust the height of the car, to lower it or make it higher. And then we've also got a shortcut button, which lets you save whatever important setting you want. Now, how do you change the direction of the air vents? Because these don't move by themselves. How do you do that? You have to use the system here. If I go into the menu, I can then move it around and change where it goes. I can't do that any other way. Really interesting way of doing things. It does give you a lot of control, obviously, about where you want the air, but you can't physically move these yourself. So that is a Porsche Taycan. That is Porsche's electric vehicle. There are so many different variants of the car. There's something for everyone. It's got fantastic technology both inside and outside, and it drives amazingly. Big thank you to Porsche UK for letting me make this video and film this car. Subscribe if you want to see more, and give this a like, please, as it helps with the algorithm. See you in the next video. Thank you very much.